Wife divorces and wants husband's $3 million private island, but he tricks her into taking the worthless island. The brother of a good friend of mine went through a divorce last year. The divorce was fairly messy. His soon-to-be ex-wife was trying to get as much as she could. My friend and his siblings all jointly inherited their grandfather's cabin a few months earlier. It is situated on a private island in Canada that has been owned by the family for 4 generations. It's about 500 square feet and easily worth over $3 million, and their grandfather had several unexpected private offers over that value, all refused with no interest in selling. The family was notified by her lawyer that she was requesting payment to buy out her 1/6 ownership. Each sibling owned 1/3, and she was trying to claim half of her husband's share. They tried to discuss a few alternatives, such as giving her a 1/6 right to usage but no ownership, and she declined, apparently intent on forcing them to sell it, knowing that none of them could afford to front the money to their brother to keep the cabin in their ownership. Their lawyer, a family friend, did a bunch of work to find a favorable solution for them. In looking over the grandfather's will, he discovered that the divorcing brother did not in fact own any part of the island with the cabin on it. It seemed that their grandfather bought up a bunch of other islands nearby the cabin and willed them to his grandchildren separately. He only owned a small nearby island made up of rocks and gravel, not big enough to build on and not worth any money at all. Not wanting to give her anything at all, they made her an offer, attempting to look like they were giving her more than she deserved and with the appearance of being desperate to keep ownership of the cabin. They gave her 75% usage rights of, quote, the island for 25 years with no ownership. In the offer, they named the worthless island by its legal land title name. She made a counteroffer, which was identical, but she wanted to add her rights to rent the island out for profit, and she wanted choice over her time allocation, which she drafted in the offer. They agreed. Apparently, her new boyfriend was more interested in the cabin than the money. They mailed her a set of keys for the cabin. They were keys for a master lock for their life jacket storage box on the dock at the shore. They also gave her a fake key with a bright yellow floating foam keychain to give her the impression that there would be a boat available to get to the island. They allowed her to believe her deal was for the cabin's island for quite a while, as the divorce was still not finalized. Her first weekend with the island was a long weekend, and she invited her family out along with her new boyfriend. They all went on a 400-kilometer drive, and were greeted by my friend's dad and their lawyer. The whole thing was planned by their lawyer, who I'm fairly good friends with as well. He tells me that her family was stranded on the island for hours as they hired a barge to ferry them over, and they waited until the barge left before going over the details of what she agreed to. He says she attempted legal action once more after that, accusing the family of fabricating the will after the fact. Apparently, her lawyer dropped the case before it even started. Okay, so an update. Apparently, I had a bunch of facts wrong on this story. I was rather drunk when I heard it originally. My friend says that the cabin wasn't an inheritance at all. The siblings purchased it jointly. Apparently, their grandfather had the cabin as an asset that was owned by his business. The business was bought by another company before he passed away, and the siblings quickly bought the cabin back when they discovered that it was sold. Also, the cabin was apparently not owned by the family for generations. It was a group of islands next to the cabin's island that they owned for generations. It seems the grandfather bought several more islands and had the cabin built to bring clients and business partners out for fishing trips. However, while the cabin and the land that it was built on weren't inheritances, the other group of islands were an inheritance. My friend's brother was already separated from his wife when they acquired the cabin. The wife was misinformed by a family member that the cabin was an inheritance. That's why she went after it so strong. Okay, so when the narrator first read the title of this story, he was fairly certain that this was just going to be an awful story of rich people fighting over their massive inheritances. But it seems like at least we aren't dealing in mansions and Lamborghinis after all. Yeah, from the perspective we have, it seems like the ex-wife was trying to milk her former partner for all the value she could, and was letting her new boyfriend have a say in the terms of things. It implies that she was definitely doing this to win big rather than have an amicable divorce from a relationship that just wasn't working. But we're a bit limited in our account by a drunk author and only knowing their side of things. That's a tentative jerk title for the ex-wife from me. Jerky until proven innocent, Your Honor. Pick a fight and then pull out a gat? Not on our watch. Back in my college days, several friends and I went to Lake Havasu, Arizona for a spring break. Those of you who've been probably hung around the London Bridge Resort at some point. Next to the hotel area, there is a walking path that follows a canal, which leads under the old London Bridge and then to Lake Havasu itself. This canal allows people to park their boats within walking distance to the resort. One night, 3 of my friends and I went for a stroll along this path. During the walk, we heard some shouting, which went along the lines of, "Hey, be cool, be cool. We're just leaving, man, be cool." My group hung back a bit, and after a second, a group of guys came up. We asked them what was going on, and they said there were 2 guys in a boat. They were flashing people in the face with a spotlight, talking crap and annoying them, and then pulling out a piece when they were about to get their butts kicked. We'll refer to the guys in the boat as D-bags from here on out. So my group decided that we weren't going to stand for this and came up with a plan. We continued down the pathway to D-bag's boat and played dumb. We asked them, what are those guys so scared of? And being the smug, self-satisfied little D-bags that they were, they said, those guys wanted to pick a fight with us, so I pulled my gat on them. It was actually an old .38 revolver. At that point, I knew this was going to be pretty easy. You see, one of the members of our group was a girl, a very pretty girl wearing a bikini and cut-off jean shorts. She laid on the dumb bimbo card and in no time had them easing out of her hand. She said, I've never seen one before. Is it heavy? Do you have any more? And these idiots handed her their piece to hold and said, no, that's the only one. She then handed it over to our buddy Jay, who's a 6'4", 280-pound wall of meat. Jay threw that thing close to 250 feet away into the canal, which made a very satisfying thunk when it hit the water. Both D-bags were completely speechless. It took them close to 20 seconds just to process what had happened. Finally, one of them spoke and was all, what the frick? Why did you do that? You'd better go get it. And we just laughed and said, no, we won't. Think about that the next time you're flashing people with that spotlight. After a few minutes of incoherent shouting, one of them tried to get into Jay's face for some stupid reason. He didn't even make it out of his boat, and Jay shoved him back into his seat hard enough that the chair broke. Neither one of the D-bags were very big. Our girl buddy probably could have taken them. Our other buddy Jace told them to go park somewhere else for the night because if we saw them again, we would kick their butts for real. And they pulled off. And when they were out and away from us, they started talking crap again, but we just kept laughing at them. After they were gone, we finished our walk, went back to the hotel, and started partying again. It was a great night. So if any of you make it out that way again, get your snorkel out. There's an old, rusted piece of crap pistol at the bottom of a canal by the London Bridge Resort. Were we the jerks? Yeah, honestly, this or calling the cops is a great idea, but for the sake of entertainment, I have to say I do prefer this method. These guys' mouths were cashing checks that they could not pay. And they were feeling like big men whose only reason to feel that way was an antiquated peace between them. I don't really think any civilian in public should go armed in this way, but if you're gonna let it happen in your country, I'm pretty sure punk kids threatening passers-by isn't really your aim, right? Also, it's kind of funny thinking about these guys trying to go to the cops. What are they gonna tell them? That these people destroyed our revolver that we were pointing at people on the waterfront? Bunch of clowns, they got what they deserved and they probably didn't get that weapon in any honest way. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My wife keeps tying my boots after I've told her to keep her hands off them. I tried to teach her a lesson and really hurt her feelings. Yeah. I know the title is a bit bizarre, and I can't believe I'm actually writing this. My wife is a neat freak, always has been. She throws the notes that are on my desk out, assuming that they're garbage. My belongings get rearranged to the point where it takes me hours to find them, and it is something I've come to accept. I'm not happy about it, but we have a pretty happy marriage on the whole. I'm a volunteer EMT, and I keep my boots unlaced up against the wall next to my clothes hamper so that I can throw them on along with my uniform. If a call comes in during the middle of the night, for example. Well, my wife has taken to tying the bootlaces when she sees them untied. Not only does she tie them, But she tightens them and double knots them to the point where I need to undo the knot, open up the boots, and let a little slack out to fit my feet into them. I ignored it the first few times, but the third time she did it, I made a point to bring it up to her the next day. I very calmly said, "Hun, I appreciate that you want everything neat, but please do not touch my boots in the future. Time is of the essence when I'm going on a call, and at 2 in the morning, I don't have the time to unlace them and open them up. It's not just a minor inconvenience, it's people's lives. So I'd appreciate it if you left them alone." She rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic and that she wouldn't help me out by keeping my things neat in the future. Well, she never stopped. No matter how many times I've asked her, told her, or begged her, she just laughed and said, "Well, you know how I am." The other night, a page went out for a CPR in progress. I went to throw my boots on and they were once again tightened beyond recognition. So I'm sitting there on the edge of the bed, cursing, trying to get my boots open, and fumbling due to the stress of the situation. My wife opened her eyes, groggily looked at me and asked, "Don't you need to go on that call?" I know I was in the wrong here and I regret it. I slammed the boot onto the ground and yelled, "Yes, I do. I would have been out the door 5 minutes ago except some stupid idiot fricked with my goddamn boots again." My wife got up without another word, walked into the bathroom and slammed the door. I got my boots open and went on the call. By the time we arrived on site, the police had gotten the victim back, so I didn't have to do CPR, but I was sweating and shaking, thinking my delay could have cost a life. I got home and my wife wasn't talking to me. She ignored me the entire day until we finally sat down and talked. She said I'd scared her with how angry I got, that she thought I was going to hit her, and she didn't know I was capable of getting so angry. Note that I've never raised a hand to her, nor have I ever yelled at her before. I'm absolutely not a violent person in any way, shape, or form. I apologized for yelling at her, and acknowledged that I hadn't meant to snap at her. I was frustrated with the situation as I needed to get to the person in need of CPR as soon as possible, and it was a delay that didn't need to happen. I once again pleaded with her not to touch my boots because lives were literally on the line. She told me that if I was going to overreact and make her afraid, she would never touch my boots again because she didn't want to live like that. Last night, before I got into bed, I had a sinking feeling, so I went over and checked my boots. I was very disappointed to find them tightened up again, so I decided to show her how it felt. I went over to her closet and pulled out her running shoes. I unlaced the shoelaces on both of them, removed them from the shoes completely, curled them up into a little coil, put them inside the shoes, and put them back. I then went to sleep. At 6:15, I was woken up by my wife screaming, "How could you? Why would you do this?" holding up both laceless shoes with tears in her eyes. My wife likes to go for an early morning run, and I knew she'd want to get out the door as soon as possible. I smiled and said, "You know how I am, I just like things neat." She continued sobbing and walked out of the room. So by the time she was all laced up again, it was raining, so she'd missed out on her run. I actually feel pretty terrible about that because I really only wanted to delay her, not ruin her plans completely. At this point, she's alternating between crying that I went out of my way to hurt her and ignoring my presence. I acknowledge that what I've done has been pretty childish and not at all constructive. I just don't know what to do. She said, through tears, "You admitted that you were totally in the wrong for yelling at me, and then you turned around and took it out on me in a different way? What is wrong with you?" The problem is, to her, an apology means taking on 100% of the fault. When I apologized for blowing up, she took that to mean she was 100% in the right, and that my feelings were completely unjustified. So at this point, I haven't apologized for ruining her run, because she'll take that to mean that she wasn't wrong to touch my boots. I've tried to have these discussions, but it's in one ear and out the other. We have such a good relationship otherwise, but I feel like this issue has reached a tipping point, and it's going to continue to result in arguments until we resolve it. How do I make things right with my wife while still letting her know that I won't tolerate her disrespecting my property anymore? Okay, update. My wife and I started talking again. We had a very serious conversation, and I did apologize for what I did to her running shoes. And then I told her I had to speak some truth and I wanted her to promise me that she wasn't going to roll her eyes, interrupt me, scoff, or get sarcastic with me, which she did. I told her that I wasn't kidding about my boots, that while most of the time I caught geriatric transports, falls, and nausea, there were instances where response time was of the essence, and I didn't have time to play around with my boots in the middle of the night. I told her that there have been times when my intervention has been critical in saving a life. when my training has helped me recognize an underlying emergency, or when a call I made ensured that a patient was prioritized upon arrival at the hospital. I explained that a lot of the crap that I see I don't tell her about because I don't want to give her nightmares or make her worry about me. She actually listened and didn't dismiss what I had to say. She responded that she was trying to help by keeping things neat. I responded, "But you're not, sweetie. I'm not trying to be mean, but you're not helping. You're hindering me. One day it may be the difference between life and death. I need you to not touch my gear. It's where I know where it is, it's where I can easily find it in a short amount of time, and if you move it, you're impeding an emergency response. I don't care if it looks neat, it serves a function. It doesn't look pretty. If you want to help me, please leave my gear where I put it." A few nights later, I had my friend Officer Rich come over. Officer Rich was one of the 2 cops that did CPR on the victim on the big night of the blow-up. The 3 of us sat on our deck and had a few social distancing beers. He talked about getting there, doing CPR, giving Narcan, waiting for the ambulance, and getting her back shortly before we got there. He then pulled out a few photos of car accidents that I'd worked at. He showed them to my wife and pointed out, "This car went into a tree. Your husband crawled into the wreck and put a collar on the driver and stayed in there giving him oxygen until we could get him out. Your husband pulled a 3-year-old out of this wreck. Your husband recognized that the driver had a stroke and took her to a stroke center, which likely saved her life." After that, I told her I had something I wanted to show her, and I asked her for the same promise I'd asked earlier. When she agreed, I showed her a video on YouTube of a police body cam from an overdose. This video showed how critical time is in getting someone back, and the training someone goes through in order to give the counter-medication, do CPR, and utilize an AED. I told her, "I'm not trying to attack you. I don't want to have a fight, but I want you to understand what I go through. That I hope every call I go on is transporting a boo-boo, because otherwise it means if I don't do everything right, someone could die. If I don't get out that door as quickly as possible, someone could suffer brain damage while they're waiting for me to give them oxygen. If I'm upset and shaking because I had to waste time opening my boots, I might miss something critical and someone might not make it." She acknowledged that she understood and told me she hadn't really thought about the danger of what I do until the other night when she saw the photos of the wrecks. I told her that I think she has OCD and needs to see a therapist because it's hurting our marriage. I listed examples of her throwing important things out, moving things without permission, and messing with my gear. I offered to go together and said I'd be willing to work on things together. After I pointed out the pattern, she agreed that it was time to speak to someone. She wants to think about whether she wants to go together or by herself, but she's promised me that she's going to try and change her patterns. I brought up her saying that she thought I was going to hit her, and she acknowledged she had been with guys who flew off the handle with little provocation and scared her. That she had never seen me get angry like that, and it triggered her because she didn't think I was capable of blowing up like that. She's been very emotional lately and has been going through mood swings. She's been worried about me going out on calls. The other day she started crying and said, "I hope you know how much I appreciate what you do. Knock on wood, since we had the big talk, she hasn't touched my boots." Is everything resolved? Not by a long shot. But she seems to have a new appreciation of what I do. Thank you everyone for writing your responses. I wound up not showing her the thread because a lot of it was pretty harsh towards her. I recognize that I cherry-picked incidents that didn't put her in the best light, and there's a lot more to her and our marriage than that. She is the person I chose for the rest of my life, and I want us to work. In short, I let my wife into my world a little more, she let me into hers, and she hasn't touched my boots since. Yeah, this seems like a very complicated turn of events. I'm not going to point the finger at either you or your wife because it seems like, given some time, you guys have at least talked your way to an understanding. It seems like you both know that the blame isn't entirely on one or the other of you for the tension and that there might be some other mental factors at play here for each of you that might have escalated your fears and reactions a lot. What she was doing was disrespectful and not okay, and I think once you cooled off and stopped doing petty things to trigger her more neurotic side, laying out why you had to have your boots a certain way, the way you did, is a really good and mature way to handle it. All I really see in this story is 2 imperfect people making an earnest attempt at making a marriage work. There's actually a lot to admire in this story, and we wish you all the best in your future together. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.